I am an old woman now, with hair white as cotton left too long in the field and hands bent from years of work. But my memory is not feeble. No, it is sharp, like cane cut clean with a blade. And I will tell you what happened in Georgia, what I did, what I carried, and what I buried in the ground so deep that only the whispers of the cane and the croak of frogs remember. I was born in bondage, same as my mama and her mama before her. The land itself seemed to own us. The damp Georgia soil, the buzzing gnats, the sun that burned your back raw. We were the roots, planted in misery, and yet we kept rising again season after season because to lay down was to die. I came into this world around 15 or 16 years before the storm clouds of the Civil War gathered, though I didn't know dates back then. All I knew was the stretch of sugarcane taller than me, the cracked skin of my hands, and the sound of the whip slicing air. My mama, poor soul, worked herself to death before I was grown. She dropped one day in the row, sun high, her back still slick with sweat. They dragged her body to the edge of the field like a broken mule and left her for us to tend to at night. My daddy had been sold off years before, sent west when I was barely walking. I never knew his voice, only the echo of it in my bones when I was tired. I grew up motherless, fatherless, but not loveless. The other women in the quarters gathered me up. Auntie Ruth tied my hair back when it grew too wild. Old Sarah taught me to hum low songs that sounded like mourning doves. We were family because we had to be. The plantation itself was a wide-spreading beast. Cane fields stretched so far you could walk for hours and still hear the rustle. Right in the middle of the main field stood an old stone well. Its mouth gaped dark and round, its rope frayed, its bucket always damp. We drew water from it every day, the overseer's eyes on us as we filled gourds and jars. The elders said it was bottomless, that things dropped down never came back. Children shivered when they passed it. I never forgot the way it swallowed sound, how a pebble would vanish without even an echo. And then there was him, Mr. Calloway, the overseer. A white man with tobacco-stained teeth and eyes like glass marbles, cold and hard. He was cruel not for duty but for pleasure. He carried a cane rod that he snapped across our backs like it was a fiddle bow. He spat juice in our faces if we moved too slow, laughed when a man buckled under the weight of a load. Women hated him most, for his hands were never still. He liked to corner us by the sheds, breathing whiskey, whispering filth, daring us to speak. Those who did, those who lifted their heads and cursed him under their breath, he'd threatened to sell down to Louisiana swamps or Savannah brothels, whichever punishment fit his twisted fancy. I remember one morning clear as glass. The dew still clung to cane leaves, and I was bent over with a basket. Calloway strolled past, swinging his rod, whistling. He stopped near me, leaned down, and spat a brown stream of tobacco juice close enough it splattered my cheek. The other workers froze, but I didn't move. My hands clenched around the cane stalks, and inside me something rose, not fear, not yet, but a heat. He looked at me with that smirk of his and said, "Too small to be worth much, but maybe I'll find a use for you." Then he walked on. That night, lying on a pallet in the quarters, I could still feel the spit drying on my skin. I pressed my palm against my cheek and swore to myself I would not die like my mama, work to the bone, humiliated until her last breath. I was young, small, yes, but not weak, not hollow. I had something burning inside me that Calloway couldn't see, couldn't measure. The others whispered sometimes, late at night, about running north, about uprisings, about the Haitian stories passed mouth to mouth. But whispers only carried so far, and fear always choked them quiet. Still, I listened. Still, I dreamed. In those dreams, I was not bent under cane stalks. I was walking free across land that belonged to no master. And yet when I woke, there was the well again, standing in the middle of the field like a mouth waiting to be fed. I would draw water from it, watching the rope twist, watching the shadows swallow the bucket whole. And I thought, maybe the land itself offers a way. I'll tell you something I never said out loud until now. Calloway thought me small and weak. He thought his spit and his cane and his threats would keep me bowed. But he forgot a well has no bottom for a man like him. That was the seed planted in me. And like the cane, it grew, tall and sharp, reaching for its season to be cut. I had seen the inside of pain before, but never wore it like a second skin until the day I told Mr. Calloway no. It was early spring, the air heavy with cane smoke from the boiling houses. I was hauling bundles of split stalk, arms raw, my apron sticking to my belly from sweat. That was when he came up behind me, no warning. Just the stink of liquor and rot and his voice low in my ear like a copperhead ready to strike. "You ever think about what a night with me might get you?" he asked. I stood still, didn't flinch, just turned my head slightly and whispered, "No, sir, I don't trade my dignity." Silence, then the sound of his cane hitting the ground as he stepped back, too calm for comfort. The next thing I knew, I was on my knees. He'd slapped me so hard my ears rang like church bells. The others had turned away, not out of cruelty, but fear. We all knew what happened next, and it did. Next morning, before sun kissed the fields, he called everyone out. Lined us like fence posts along the cane row. Men, women, even the little ones still crusted with sleep. He made a spectacle of it, dragged me by the wrist to a wooden post, tied my arms above my head like meat ready to be salted. Then the whip came. 12 times it cracked. I didn't scream, not once. I bit the inside of my cheek until it bled, but I kept my eyes open. Stared dead ahead. He wanted to break me, humiliate me. But every lash that kissed my back carved something else into me. Resolve, rage, a vow I'd etch in blood if I had to. When it was done, Auntie Ruth wrapped my back with wet cloth torn from her own apron. I couldn't lie on my spine for 3 days, but I still went to the field. They could scar me, but they'd never stall me. Cane work don't stop for wounds. You cut and haul, sunrise to near pitch black. My fingers learned the rhythm faster than my mind could resist it. The hook sliced clean through stalks, muscles burning as you bundled them onto carts. Children dragged baskets, men sweated rivers, women like me tied cloth round our middles to keep our cracked ribs from spreading. The whip snapped like thunder overhead. Sometimes it was on someone else, sometimes it was just a threat. But the sound of it lived inside us. You flinched even when it wasn't for you. You learned to move fast, not speak, not think, just survive. At the center of that field, like a heart that beat once every lifetime, stood the old well. It was rough stone, dark with moss, always slick. The pulley creaked like an old man's knees when you drew water. Some said it had no end, that a boy once fell in and never hit bottom. Others said a girl tossed in her dead baby wrapped in corn husks, and the crying still echoed out on some nights. Me, I didn't know what truth the well held. But I knew this. When I stared into it, I felt something pull at me, not to jump in, but to feed it. Like it was hungry for justice, or vengeance, or both. Day after day, I'd draw water and whisper to it, soft so no one heard. "You'll take him one day," I'd say. "Swallow him whole." It became a prayer. Not to God, who had been too quiet for too long, but to the well, to the earth itself. Because sometimes dirt and stone held more promise than heaven. Then came the night I heard it. Calloway had been drinking heavy, stumbling from the big house toward the cane field, muttering to himself. I was in the shadow of the tool shed, resting my back against the wall, hiding from the moon. That's when I heard him laugh and say to another overseer, "I think I'll send that mouthy girl Dinah to Mrs. Stell's in Savannah. She can earn her keep with her back and her legs. Won't need no cane for that." They laughed like jackals. I stayed silent. Frozen. My stomach clenched so tight I thought I'd be sick right there in the dirt. A brothel. That was death slower than any whip. And worse. A place where men paid for pieces of you until there was nothing left but hollow eyes and a rotted soul. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the cot, my back seeping into the cloth, and stared at the ceiling while rats scratched in the corners. The fear was hot, but the rage burned hotter. And in the morning, I woke different. I tied my headscarf tight and went to the well, dropped the bucket, listened to it vanish into the dark. Pulled it back up slow. The water was cold, bitter, clear. I stared into that hole and nodded. "I hear you," I whispered. "And I got something for you to eat." That was the morning the plan began. Nights on the plantation carried their own kind of silence, thick and humming like the land itself was holding its breath. No whip cracked after sundown. No overseer's bark rang out. Just the rustle of cane in the wind, the chirp of frogs, and the creak of floorboards in the slave quarters as tired bodies shifted in sleep. But I didn't sleep much after that night. I heard my name spoken in filth. I kept my fear folded up small, like a letter I never meant to send. But fire like mine needed breath, needed ears. So I told Auntie Ruth first. She was sitting on her stool outside the quarters, twisting old corn husks into dolls for the children. Her fingers worked like they had always known pain and made peace with it. I sat beside her, quiet for a long while until I said low, "I'm gonna kill him." She didn't look up, just tied the husk in a knot and placed it down beside her. "You talkin' 'bout Calloway," she said, voice as soft as the moss on the trees. I nodded. She sighed. "Child revenge is a blade with no handle. You pick it up, you best be ready to bleed." "I already bled," I whispered. "Ain't scared to bleed again." She finally turned her head then, old eyes shining in the moonlight. "He's a monster, no doubt, but monsters don't die easy. They pull folk down with them when they go." I didn't answer, just stared out across the fields where the canes stood still, dark as tombstones. Auntie Ruth didn't bless my plan, but she didn't stop it either. That was all I needed. Later that week, I told Isaiah. He was younger than me by a few months, tall and quiet, with a scar down his jaw from when Calloway struck him with a broken bottle. We'd grown up working side by side, sneaking bits of bread to each other when the hunger got too bad. He wasn't a talker, but his silence was the kind that held loyalty. We stood by the shed after supper, steam still rising from the corn mush in our bellies. "If I do something," I said, "real bad, but for a good reason, will you keep it secret?" He didn't ask what. He just said, "I will." And that was enough. The days passed slow, hot, heavy, but I used them. When no one was watching, I'd draw buckets full of stones from the well instead of water. I'd carry them with both hands, walk the length of the field, sweat pouring down my temples. My arms screamed, but I didn't stop. I trained myself to be strong enough, quiet enough, steady enough. Sometimes I'd walk past the well and whisper, "You still hungry?" Other times I just stood there watching it, feeling something like companionship. It was waiting just like me. And I began to think that maybe the earth itself had eyes, and it had seen enough. Dusk was when Calloway let his wickedness wander. He'd drink from his tin flask, stumble across the porch of the big house, spit tobacco into the dirt. Most folks avoided him. I didn't. I started watching. I learned how his steps leaned to the left after a few gulps, how he scratched the back of his neck when he was drunk, how he mumbled to himself when he walked near the well on his way to the barn. One evening, I saw him piss against the side of the well, laugh, and say, "Ain't no devil in there." I'm the only devil this place needs. And I thought, you're not a devil, just flesh, and flesh can fall. But in the quiet of my cot, when I was alone with my thoughts, the questions came. What kind of woman plans a killing? What does that make me? Would I be cursed forever? Would Mama's spirit turn from me in shame? But then I remembered her body, tossed like rags. I remembered the lash. I remembered the word brothel hanging in the air like rot, and I knew the answer. I would not be wicked, I would be justice, worn thin and ragged but still breathing. He was already death, walking around in stolen hours. I would just be the one to collect what he owed. One night, I sat by the well with the moon high and round, and I said aloud, "If you take him, I'll never ask for nothing else." No wind answered, but the rope swung slow in the night breeze, and I took that as yes. Each morning after, I moved through my chores like a shadow, not faster, not slower. Just steady. I kept my face blank, my eyes low. I fed pigs, hauled water, tied bundles. But inside, a clock ticked. My hands were getting stronger. My will was sharpening like the cane knives we weren't allowed to hold. He didn't know it, but every day he was walking closer to the well. And so was I. The days got shorter. The air cooler, the sky grayer, and I waited. And the well waited with me. The day burned hotter than any I remember. The air didn't move. The cane drooped like it was trying to melt into the dirt. Sweat ran down my spine before I'd taken 10 steps in the row. Even the birds had gone quiet, hiding somewhere cooler. The kind of heat that made tempers snap like dry twigs. Calloway came out early, already smelling of sour whiskey and swamp rot. His shirt half-buttoned, his boots muddy, his eyes mean. You could see it in the way he walked. Something in him needed to break something else, and he didn't care who. Isaiah was hauling 2 heavy bundles of cane to the cart when he stumbled over a root. Just a slip, no real harm done, but Calloway was waiting for a reason. He was on Isaiah in seconds. "You clumsy black bastard," he roared, slamming the butt of his cane into Isaiah's side. Isaiah cried out, dropped the bundle, curled into himself. Calloway didn't stop. He kicked him in the ribs once, twice, until the breath wheezed out of him like a broken bellows. I froze, hands full of stalks, and watched Isaiah cough blood into the dirt. Something inside me cracked then, not like a twig, but like a dam. I dropped the cane, didn't run to Isaiah, didn't scream. I just turned and walked toward the well. The trap was ready. I had waited long enough. I let the hours pass slow, kept working like nothing had happened. But I watched him. His flask drained faster. His gait grew sloppy. I could feel the time creeping up behind me like dusk. When the sun touched the edge of the trees and turned the sky the color of rust, I moved. I drew near the well, pulled the rope halfway, let it catch. Let it look like the pulley had locked up. I bent over, gave a few tugs, and grunted like I needed help. My heart beat so loud I thought the whole field might hear it. "Calloway," I called. "Rope's jammed again, can't get the bucket up." He turned from where he'd been spitting chew into the cane and stomped toward me. Arrogant, annoyed, drunk. "You useless girl," he snarled, shoving me aside. "Move, I'll do it." He leaned over the well, both hands on the stone rim, peered down, and I moved. With everything in me, I pushed. He didn't scream at first, just grunted, surprised, but his boot caught the slick moss and he tumbled forward. One hand caught the edge, his fingers clawing at the stone like a trapped animal. "You little bitch," he shouted. "Help me up." I didn't. I kicked his hand. He slipped deeper, but he caught the rope, stopped halfway, his body half inside the well, legs kicking, screaming curses. He was stronger than I thought. He started to pull himself up. I jumped on his back, grabbed the rope and wound it around his throat. He thrashed, bucked, slammed his elbow back into my gut so hard I nearly vomited. But I held on, wrapped my arms around his neck. His spit hit my face. His fists pounded the stone. He was screaming now, words I won't repeat. Filth. Hate. I used my knee to press down harder, my hands locked in the rope, tightening. The well groaned. The rope creaked, then he slipped. His weight dragged me forward, almost down with him. But I planted my feet, leaned back, and pulled, not to save him, to end him. His fingers scraped at the stone, left bloody trails. He choked. Gurgled. And then he was gone, just the splash. A dull, final sound, no echo, no cry, just the well swallowing him whole. I stayed there, hunched over, panting. My arms trembling. My knees scraped raw against the stone. My whole body wet with sweat, spit, blood, not all mine. The moon had risen behind a cloud, casting the cane field in silver shadow. The stalks rustled like they knew. Like they whispered, "It's done." The well gurgled once. A soft, wet sound, then silence. Not even the frogs sang at first. Then slowly the world remembered itself. Crickets chirped. An owl called. Life came back. I stood up, my back aching, hands raw, looked down into the darkness. Nothing looked back. No bubbles, no shadow. Just still, black water. I wiped my face. took one last breath of that thick, cane-sweetened air, and I said, soft so only the night could hear, the well closed its mouth around him, and I breathed free for the first time. By morning, Calloway was gone. Nobody asked questions. Nobody went looking. The white folks whispered among themselves. Sure, said maybe he got drunk and wandered off, or ran from debts, or met with misfortune in the swamps. But none of them walked too close to that well afterward, and none dared send word to the marshals. The master brought in a new overseer 2 weeks later, a man named Pike. Quieter. Mean in his own way, but not like Calloway. He didn't beat for pleasure. He didn't leer at the women. He kept his eyes down when he passed the well, like it stared back at him. The slaves didn't say much aloud, but we didn't need to. The air had changed. The whispers came soft and thick as dusk, passing between hands at the washboard, between rows in the cane. "He's gone," they said. "Vanished. The well took him. Justice done, quiet and deep." No one named me, but their eyes held something new when they met mine, something close to reverence or maybe fear. Even Auntie Ruth never asked me for the details. She just squeezed my hand one night and said, "Sometimes the earth does what the Lord won't." And me, I walked past that well every day after, but I never looked in. Didn't have to. Whatever darkness lived at the bottom had done what it needed to do, and it never called for more. I carried no guilt, only a grim sort of peace. Like a door had closed behind me, when I could never open again but wouldn't want to. I had walked through fire and come out marked, but unbroken. Time passed. Seasons changed. The cane fields rose and fell with harvest. Isaiah healed, though his limp stayed with him. Auntie Ruth died the next winter, her hands still weaving husks. The world kept turning, but the well remained, and over the years it became more than stone and rope. It became a story, a warning, a promise. They said it was where cruelty drowns, that if a soul was wicked enough and the night quiet enough, the well might open its mouth and drag them down. Mothers whispered to their children, "Even the small ones can strike back. Even the quiet ones hold storms." No one ever touched that well again. No one drew water from it. Buckets rotted at its edge. Grass grew tall around its stones. But still it stood. Waiting, now I am old. My back bends, my hands shake when I peel sweet potatoes. But my mind remembers I lived through hell, wore chains, buried love, survived men who thought they owned me. I carry scars beneath my cotton blouse that never faded, but I carry something else too, triumph, not loud, not proud, but real. I was born a slave, but that night by the well I became something more, the keeper of my own justice. And I will tell you this, child, the well still waits in Georgia, but it has already drunk its fill. What do you think justice looks like when the law refuses to see you? Dinah was born in chains, but in one moment of fire and silence, she rewrote her own fate. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt powerless until you found your own voice? Have your ancestors passed down stories of quiet resistance or whispered justice? We want to hear them. Like this video if Dinah's courage gave you chills. Subscribe to our channel for more untold stories of Black resistance, resilience, and power. Turn on notifications so you never miss the voices history tried to bury. Because some stories weren't written in books, they were whispered beside wells.